Starting recording, hopefully.
Fabulous. Good morning, everyone. So myself and Joanna here this morning to discuss domestic abuse towards male victims. So we're hopefully going to have quite an informative discussion about that. First, to introduce ourselves. So myself and Joanne both work for Behind Closed Doors, but we're actually in different parts of the service. So I'll explain about my role and the part of the service that I work in, and Joanne can then discuss her role and the part of the service that she works with. So I'm the supervisor for the community team at Behind Closed Doors, but we are in fact actually part of Leeds Domestic Violence Service. So we support men and women, and we have done for quite a number of years. We support men and women who are experiencing or have experienced domestic abuse in the past. We did have a male practitioner who was very passionate about working and supporting male victims, but unfortunately he passed away in April 2020, and we've not, due to COVID and other complications, we've not yet we hadn't until recently been successful in recruiting another male practitioner until just recently. So we've now interviewed two male practitioners have actually been successful and will be starting in post in April. So obviously I'm in the community team and we support the medium to high risk cases, and then I'll let Joanne explain about her role and the part of the service that she works for.
Hiya, I'm Joanne. So I work at, my part of the service is called Prevention and Recovery Service, and I'm the supervisor of that service. So we are not in the LDVS contract, we sit outside it. We offer support low to medium risk, and ours is very much about the emotional recovery following domestic abuse. We do work with people who are in a relationship, but it's limited because we can't do recovery work while people are still in the situation. We're not a therapy service, and we're not a mental health service, although we know that domestic abuse, mental health go hand in hand. So we offer one-to-one sessions so that people can explore what they've been through, look at the dynamics, the impact on themselves, and then we've recently introduced some small groups. Our groups are only for people that have done the one-to-one, it's a follow-on, and we also support men, women, we support people, so anyone's welcome into our service if they are a victim and they're classed low to medium risk. And either service, because I know there's what is low, medium, high risk, a quick phone call and we can say, yeah, that would fit the criteria, or which team's criteria it would fit.
And sometimes, you know, we kind of work hand in hand almost, because, you know, we've supported people in the past where we've supported them in the community team. They were at high risk. They were maybe in the relationship or thinking of leaving the relationship, and we've supported them around safety planning, around getting orders to keep themselves safe, you know, ensuring that they leave the relationship safely, and looking at all the practical elements that impacts, like housing, benefits, employment, you know, children's social care, all things like that. And hopefully then when we get that person to where they're out of that abusive relationship and at a good place and things are looking well, then often we can refer on to the PARS team, because then they can kind of do like almost the icing on the cake and, you know, do that recovery things. And so it's like a full package really. So yeah.
Right, can you do next slide, please?
So obviously you know, we all recognise that women are primarily victims of domestic abuse, but we also are strong believers. You know, we're not just an organisation that pays lip service. We have for many years supported men, and you know, okay, 1 in 4 women experience domestic abuse, but 1 in 6 men will also experience domestic abuse or violence within their lifetime. And I think the thing is now that the support's kind of getting more out there, that more and more, you know, men are feeling able to come forward, which is great.
Next slide, please.
What do you want to do with that?
Yeah. So just we've just put a few statistics on male victims of domestic abuse, and we took these stats from Mankind because they've got the latest stats on their website. So of the domestic abuse crimes recorded by police, 26% were committed against men. So that equates to around 155,000 offences per year. 61% of men who called the Mankind Initiative helpline had never spoken before about the abuse, and 64% said they would not have called the helpline if it was not anonymous. Now, just to add to that, our service is completely confidential service, but we do ask for details, which are then kept confidential within our service. So there's 39 organisations with 238 spaces in refuges or safe houses for men.
We've got
only 58 are dedicated for men. So
that's one thing that we see. There's definitely not enough refuge spaces for men. That's why a lot of the interventions from the community team about helping to keep someone safe is so vital, you know, because obviously there needs to be more spaces available for men, definitely.
I mean, that's very slow. It's very slow, but it is
increasing.
Yeah. Because I think there's still a belief. Someone only recently said to me that there was absolutely nothing for men. So I think it's positive that there is that growth.
I've actually referred men into refuge and got them refuge space, so which is absolutely fantastic. You know, I think the thing is for men that it is becoming not so much as, you know, not being able to talk about it. And, you know, just prior to COVID, we were doing a pilot scheme where we were going out with police and attending domestic incidents, and on a couple of them occasions a couple were men that had reported, and just obviously that non-judgmental approach and them feeling that they're in a safe space and able to confide, you know, the difference in the questions that they answered to us rather than a police officer, you know, was kind of evident. Yeah, definitely.
And then over the pandemic period, not just Mankind, our organisation, we all saw a huge increase. Theirs was 75% to their website. We also saw an increase. Half of male victims fail to tell anyone they are a victim of domestic abuse, and there are 2.5 times less likely to tell anyone over female victims. And quite often when we do speak to male victims, we are the first people that they've ever disclosed to, and quite often
a lot of men question that.
They question.
They're not, you know, they're not sometimes they don't come to you as a victim, you know, they might come to you with the situation and, you know, and kind of be questionable and, you know, question, is this domestic abuse? Because obviously, you know, you've got the physical abuse, which is, you know, you've got the injuries, you know, so it's a lot more clearer, but often, you know, the psychological and the emotional abuse is a lot more subtle. So sometimes just talking through the situation helps people recognise what they're actually, you know, experiencing.
And then this is quite a shocking stat. 11% of male victims have considered taking their life due to partner abuse. There's been increases in calls regarding suicide over the pandemic, and over the past 5 years, again, another shocking stat, on average 12 men per year have been killed by a partner or ex-partner. That averages at 74 women a year. But I think what's sort of shocking is we do hear about women being killed in domestic situations. We're not hearing about the men. Yeah. And it's, you know, it's happening, which is so important. I think that we're getting this message out here and that we are here to support. So next slide, please. And if anyone has any questions, you know, feel free to ask.
Okay.
So
go on.
The domestic abuse bill changed last year, and the definition of domestic abuse was altered. So this is the government definition. So it's the behaviour of a person towards another person, person A, person B, and it's domestic abuse if both parties are aged over 16 and are personally connected to each other, and also the behaviour is abusive. So it doesn't matter if the behaviour consists of a single incident or a course of conduct. And previously it was about looking at more multiple incidents rather than a single incident. And then it includes the physical, sexual, violent, threatening behaviour, the psychological, emotional and other abuse, the economic, which was previously called financial, and also added in there is a controlling and coercive behaviour,
which sometimes can be quite difficult to prove. We often find, like with the police, there's normally a prior like a priority incident, and then the controlling and coercive behaviour is additional. So, you know, often there'll be an assault and then they look at the controlling and coercive behaviour, because that itself is, I think, is quite difficult to prove, and you often don't find cases where they're just being charged with the controlling and coercive behaviour. It's always an additional charge, if that makes sense. Next slide. So here we've just kind of listed out some of the types of abuse. Like I said previously, obviously the physical abuse, you know, is more evident. Obviously the hitting, punching, biting, spitting, stabbing, restraining, often, you know, strangulation as well. You know, people often say, oh, well, no, it wasn't, they didn't try to strangle me, but they grabbed me around the neck. That is quite a, when someone is grabbed by the neck, we see that as quite a high risk factor, because, you know, how, you know, no one knows how long you can hold someone around the neck for that could be fatal to someone. So obviously strangulation is quite a, you know, quite a high risk factor to us. And then obviously onto the extremes of murder. There's different types of abuse, sexual abuse, violent and threatening behaviour. Sometimes the threatening, you know, sometimes, especially when people have been physically abusive in the past, they then don't have to be physically abusive anymore, because that threat of violence is already there. So sometimes then a threat is scary enough, you know. So I don't know if you want to elaborate, Jo, on any of that.
Yeah, just to, I mean, this is a small overview. The list is endless, yeah. But just sort of some to throw in there. When you're looking at the physical abuse, we'd also class where somebody's got a disability. If an abuser removes their aids, for example, the wheelchair, even medication, that's also physical abuse, because you know, you're preventing that person from
their recovery or what they need, or
getting help. So there are other things to consider.
I think a primary one that we kind of see as well when supporting male victims is counter allegations as well, that you know, and it's really sad that sometimes you see when relationships break down, that sometimes the mothers will make allegations, which we've even got cases where they've been proven to be false allegations in the court. But they've used them allegations to prevent the father from having contact from the child, which to me is abuse not only to the father, is abuse to the child as well, because that person has prevented that child from having a relationship with their father. You know, so we've had quite a couple of complex cases where they've gone to quite extreme levels, you know, to make allegations and kind of try and prove that person is abusive, to prevent, you know, and the process that then the father has to go through to prove his innocence, B, prove that he's a good father, and all the obstacles that they then face in terms of having to go through court proving all that, if they don't qualify for legal aid, if they work and they can't afford to pay for legal representation, you know, and their understanding how much they're able to represent themselves. So, you know, that's why we do support with child contact proceedings, which can be quite a daunting, you know, court process, and can enable an abuser to further abuse, you know, a victim through that process. Do you want to look at any of the others, Jo?
No, I think a lot of them, they're self-explanatory. Although the gaslighting, we're hearing a lot of that at the moment, and the distortion of reality. You know, people saying to us, I feel like I'm going mad, and that's what domestic abuse does. Yeah. It's not on there, but also the one thing that we constantly get told is, I feel like I'm treading on eggshells. These are feelings that you shouldn't be having in a healthy relationship. So
I think we just want to point out as well that list isn't any different for a man or a woman, you know, so that's, you know, and that's why we see it, you know, we support people who are experiencing or have experienced domestic abuse. It's non-gender. Domestic abuse is, you know, affects everyone, can affect anyone.
Next slide, please. So just this is how it can make people feel. So you know, people will try and hide domestic abuse, but the impact, they're maybe struggling at work, depression, feeling isolated, stressed, eating disorders, suicidal thoughts, problem sleeping. We just wanted to put that one out there, just sort of to consider how it does make people feel.
And often as well, when we're supporting people, they never just come to us with just the domestic abuse. You know, often it comes hand in hand with mental health, with drug and alcohol issues, you know, that lots of things. And sometimes people, you know, might use alcohol or drugs as a crutch to kind of help them deal and cope with the abuse that they're experiencing. You know, same as with the mental health. Okay, they might have had mental health before, but, you know, some people have mental health as a result of the abuse that they're experiencing, or it can, you know, it can exacerbate the mental health. So it's never just the domestic abuse in isolation that we're often supporting people with. It's about dealing with all those things and much more as well. Next slide, please.
So the impact of domestic abuse, so to consider how it makes people feel. So we describe it as an onion, because, you know, you see the outside of an onion and that's all you see, that smooth skin, but you cut into an onion and you've got the layers. So the layers of the onion are, you've got the physical effects, the injuries, the sleep disruption, the impact, effects on behaviour. A person becomes withdrawn, can't function, feel like they're walking on eggshells, practical effects. So like Jackie mentioned, child contact, the legal system, there's the housing, there's the finances to consider, the interpersonal and social effects, so how someone's relating to others. So if they've been through or are in an abusive relationship, unable to trust, feel stigmatized, because actually, you know, that's one thing that people say to us all the time, that, you know, it does carry a stigma, and even though that the person is the victim, they feel that they're the one that's done something wrong. So part of our work is helping people to understand, you know, this is not their fault, they haven't caused it. There's the psychological, the cognitive effects. So the impact of domestic abuse, it affects your thinking, your logic, your memory, your processing emotions. It also affects your intrapersonal effects, so how someone views themselves and feels about themselves. So the self-doubt, the shame, low confidence, low self-esteem. Impact on parenting, that can come from the other parents saying, you know, you're not a good parent, undermining your parenting, you know, not allowing boundaries, damaged relationships. So when someone has been in an abusive relationship or are in an abusive relationship, this is what the person will be going through. So, and just to follow on from that, we haven't got a slide, but what people often say in society, why don't people just leave? Why don't they just leave? If it's that bad, why don't they just leave? So if you think about this onion, and if you are ever, you know, speaking to someone or anyone discloses that they've been through domestic abuse or are going through, just remember the onion, because actually that person, all of this is going on. So if you've got all of this going on, how can you possibly think clearly? How can you possibly make a plan? And, you know, that's what our organisation, both services, this is what we're supporting people to do. So I think it's really important to think onion, think that's why that person, or if they're, you know, underperforming at work, being late, not, you know, and it's
having to take phone calls,
and you know, because often abusers, they will demand a phone call. So maybe just have a think, and this is why people behave how they do.
Because although it's kind of down as the onion and all the different layers, it's also like a barrier as well. So this is kind of a breakdown of all the barriers that people face, why they don't leave, and, you know, alongside all the kind of mental reasons why they don't leave and the impact on their mental health and things like that, there's all the practical issues as well, you know, so that you know, the barriers, they may have children, they may fear that they're never going to see their children again, you know, that they may have a shared house, they may live at someone's house and, you know, and be homeless, they may be reliant on them for money, you know, the English might not be their first language, you know, they might not know all their rights. There's so many, you know, there's so many barriers and reasons why people stay in abusive relationships. Next slide, please.
And again, if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them in.
And here again is two lists, one of some healthy signs of healthy relationships, because obviously we know that, you know, lots of people have healthy relationships, and then obviously there's a list of some warning signs as well, and obviously that's not set in stone either. It just, you know, it's kind of a guide of some things that could, you know, are warning signs. You know, the relationship moves quickly. Some person, you know, the person puts you on guilt trips, and you know, a kind of good example of that is, you know, I had a gentleman who I supported, and he said, you know, I asked him about if he was allowed to go out, you know, with his friends and socialise, and he was like, oh no, oh, I'm allowed to go out, that's not a problem. But then, you know, in further discussion, it was then afterwards how he was made to feel about going out. So it wasn't a case of he wasn't allowed to go out. You know, she said all the time, yeah, of course you can go out. Yeah, go out. But it was the guilt trip that he was put on when he came back. And it got to the point where it just wasn't worth going out, you know, feeling the guilt that he felt that he wasn't there. You know, she was on her own having to look after the children, and he was probably cheating, and he was probably having a good time. It was just easier then for him not to go out. You know, withdrawal of affection. Isolating from family, you know, is a massive one. You know, if a perpetrator feels that you've got a strong network of support around you, they will often do things to try and isolate you from your family and friends, you know, often cause arguments and fallouts and rifts and, you know, all kinds of things to isolate you from the support that's important to you. Unreasonable jealousy. I mean, obviously I won't read through them all because obviously they are there and people can, you know, can see them. But then equally, you know, there's lots of healthy signs. I don't know if you want to go through some of them, Jo.
So I think, you know, a lot of people take the healthy signs for granted, but, you know, having realistic expectations of a person that, you know, sometimes we don't want to do everything 100% of the time that someone expects, and actually that's okay. Feel safe, you know, to go home and feel safe. People take that for granted because actually that's what should happen. Okay. But if you think back to the stats of the men and the women, that's a lot of people that are not feeling safe going home. Healthy boundaries, you know, but being able to, like Jackie said, somebody can go out, but actually then they're going to be questioned and made to feel guilty. The healthy boundaries are, I can do my part, you can do your part. Healthy disagreements. We're often told, you know, oh, it's normal to argue as a domestic abuse organisation, but actually, you know, is it an argument where you're terrified, or is it a disagreement where two people feel they can give their opinion and feel safe giving their opinion? Two completely different. Which is
absolutely fine. You know, we're all individuals, we're all different people, so you know it's fine to not agree on everything and but it's being able to feel safe and, you know, to express that disagreement.
Yeah, we just wanted to put sort of the differences there.
Next slide. So here is just about obviously getting some support. So there's the LDVS, which I explained, the community team is part of Leeds Domestic Violence Service, and obviously behind closed doors, the Prevention and Recovery Service. Next slide. And we just wanted to put together a list of support, you know, to kind of show that there is support for men out there. You know, men's mental health, men's health is a big thing at the moment. And it, you know, I think it's very crucial that men know that, you know, even if they, you know, it might be that they don't want to leave the relationship. You know, we're not here to say what you should do, what you shouldn't do. We're here to, you know, we support people to make choices and to keep themselves safe, you know. And if someone wants to stay in that relationship for whatever reason, you know, we're not there to say, oh, you've got to, you know, we're there to support them to make their choices and to try and feel safe. So yeah, we just wanted to kind of put together a list of support for men there.
And just like Jackie was saying, you know, we're not here to make anyone's choices, and for us, you know, we support people and they often go back into an abusive relationship, and again, there's no judgment if that person wants to come back to service. And just sort of to give an example, because again, sort of society, oh, why do people go back? So just sort of to put an angle on that, when somebody meets an abusive person, they don't advertise I'm an abuser, and that early stage of the relationship, people usually describe it as the best relationship ever. It's like winning the lottery. So then when the abuse starts, it's quite confusing, and when somebody does leave, the abuser will often say, you know, come back, I'll change. The victim thinks of the person they initially met, and it's people, we're human beings with hope. So they often go back thinking, well, actually, there was that great relationship once, I'll go back. Generally, when someone goes back, the abuse starts again quite soon. And then, so people often go back, and we say that that's part of ending the relationship because it confirms that the abuser hasn't changed. That can happen several times, but we're always here. We're always here. We don't judge people for going back because we understand it's part of the abuse.
You know, and we also recognise that it's really, you know, it's difficult leaving an abusive relationship. We know that, we acknowledge that, but it is even more difficult staying separated in an abusive relationship, because often then the abuser will try different tactics. You know, it'd be the nice, I love you, I'll change. But then it can change to the threats, you know. Yeah, so lots of different tactics, and as well, like children, using the children against them. So yeah, it is, obviously we recognise how difficult it is to leave an abusive relationship. It's also equally difficult staying separated, staying out of that relationship.
Because once someone leaves, the impact, everything that happens doesn't stop. It's still there.
I think we're there for slides. Yeah. Any
so,
questions or any thoughts?
Hello, can I jump in?
Oh, sorry, go on, Robert.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for that. That was really interesting, especially on the figures at 1 in 6 men experienced that. I work in the States at the LGI and engineering department, and if I sort of took the figures of our staff, we have around 50 people there, so that's potentially 8 members of our staff that are going to experience it at some point. So that's really interesting and something that I've not really looked into too much. James, you might know, but on this employee assistant program, would staff be directed to the LDBS people, or to Jackie and sorry, I didn't catch the other name. Sorry,
Joanne.
Joanne, sorry.
Yeah, so I think what would happen with the employee assistance program would be that it would probably be more of a national based kind of response or answer, but obviously the team in Leeds are obviously Leeds based and local, so I imagine at some point it would kind of filter through to that as a kind of place to kind of go. So I think eventually, obviously, they would kind of get into the right support. I imagine there'll be like a national website or some database somewhere with local services. So yeah, so thank you for that, Robert. I think that's a good question, actually, just in terms of.
Good question, Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it? I mean, it may be worth us just making sure we have the contact numbers and maybe a small poster for the Health and Wellbeing Board. Obviously, with men, it is hard to initiate them conversations, so I think just having that number there.
Definitely, and I don't know if you were privy to the conversation that we had just at the beginning, Robert, which, sorry, we didn't kind of finish to explain. We've actually employed 2 new male workers, which we're so excited about. We previously had a male practitioner who sadly passed away in 2020, and because of obviously the current climate with COVID and everything, that's been quite difficult, but we've now, so next, is it April they start. One of them will be working in my team, the other one will kind of sit across my team and Joe's team, and we'll be out networking and doing like a lot of the men's health stuff and things like that. So obviously, we're well up for promoting the men's support and things like that, because do you know what, we're I mean, both myself and Joanne, we've worked here for quite a number of years. I think I've been here like 14, you've been here 12 years. 13, yeah. So, you know, we're both but we're both very passionate about, you know, it is about a person experiencing abuse, you know, regardless of their sex, their gender, you know. And yeah, that's why obviously we're here doing this talk, and we're just both really excited about having some male practitioners, because we do also recognise that there are some men that would rather speak to a man. You know, I'd like to give them that option.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thank you. Alison, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just sort of supporting what Robert's just said there about, you know, where to go. So the EAP has got a list of our crisis numbers and things on there. We'll make sure you know, that your team are linked in with that as well. So it will be, they do have sort of local information. And also, Robert, if it was a situation within work, we have got a safeguarding team as well, who we can link in with. So I think that's important to use them. The reason why I say that is, you know, the quicker you can get the support for that person, the better it is for them. And then as far as Jackie and Joanna, can I just thank you for that talk? I found it really, really useful. I am a survivor from a domestic abuse, so very, you know, very close to my heart what you were saying there. And I think, you know, we do need to make sure that men are feeling that they can talk about it, because there's too often that you hear, if domestic violence is linked with men, on social media especially, it's too often that you see a joke said straight away. Oh, is this you? Or does she wear the trousers? And little silly little things like that. And it's that stigma that we all need to be working together on to get rid of. So thank you so much.
It's not surprising, is it, that men would feel judged or not able to come forward with comments like that. And can I just jump on there as well, Alison, just to kind of, in terms of for staff, you know, behind closed doors does do training as well to like
having conversations and
dealing with DV in the workplace. So
disclosures.
You know, the behind closed doors website, if you want to go on there, you know, obviously explains about the training that we deliver to workplaces, professionals, things like that. And sometimes it's just useful to get that training, and then, you know, safeguarding ed goes on and there's an allocated person and things like that. So
brilliant. Thank you ever so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you too.
Alison, Robert's got his hand up again. Just go back to you, Robert.
Yeah, I was just jumping on what Alison said then about the males victims of domestic abuse. There's kind of jokes can be made, or it can be sort of not looked at seriously if it was the other way around. And I think when you sort of mentioned, I think was it 12 men are killed by a partner every year?
Yeah.
I think the straight assumption could be that it must have been the male that pushed his partner to the limit, and that's why that happened, rather than just there must be a story there, something we don't know about. And I think that this sort of training will be good to get rid of that stigma, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's the our trainer, she's got sort of the knowledge of domestic abuse. She's also done frontline, so she comes at work and she comes at it from all angles. And I think, it is good to be informed. And I think, you know, when we talk about murders as well, there's I don't know if people have heard, there's a DHR domestic homicide review. So it's when stats are put out, they're proven stats that actually, you know, this is a domestic murder. So
I think the media is kind of working on quite good things as well, you know, getting out there. I don't know if any of you have seen that was Beaten by My Girlfriend, is it called?
Yeah, there's some,
that's a really kind of interesting documentary about a young man that is attacked, and you know, he does nothing to instigate. He is a victim, but it's quite shocking to watch the extent that she does.
It's called Alex.
Yeah,
Alex.
yeah.
It was on BBC, and I understand it's on BBC iPlayer.
Yeah, but you know, I think that the way that they portray that, you know, and get that across, she isolated him from all his family, you know. She I mean, she got a prison sentence, you know. The things that I think it's quite an eye-opener to kind of, because often people don't realise that men can go through exactly the same as a female victim, you know, and that's why I wanted to emphasize that all them things, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female, you know, and the things what she does to him in that program is a real eye-opener, because yeah, you know, even as a professional who works with it day in, day out, it was just good to see that they kind of covered everything, and it shows that, you know, and I'm not saying that every situation and every kind of abusive situation will have all of that, but, you know, you know, it covered everything, it really did, yeah, so that's worth a watch.
Yeah, thank you, Jackie. I think what I was just going to say was just the thing I found more shocking was that you said there's about 155,000 offences. 12 people were killed a year, but then there's only 58 spaces for like men to kind of seek like refuge from this kind of thing. And I think that's when you look at it, like obviously the numbers, it's I'm not very good at maths, but percentage wise, it's not. It's really low, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think from doing this, the Men's Action and Awareness Network of Interest, we're starting to see more and more that actually there's certain like health conditions or there's certain things that happen that you'd kind of, if like someone said domestic abuse or domestic violence, you instantly think of a man hitting a female. If you said breast cancer, you instantly think of a female. But it's how the kind of systems kind of stacked to not cater for both sexes at the moment for certain things. So I think that's really, I think it's quite sad actually. Like
definitely,
yeah.
And
potentially.
We're very vocal on that, you know, because I think previously it's kind of said, well, there's not the need for, you know, males needing refuge, and you know, so, no, we're kind of very much for getting on that, you know, banging that drum. No, of course they do, you know. To be fair, there's down in Doncaster, they've been fantastic, and they've really upped their ante of taking in male victims of domestic abuse. I've made about 3 referrals to them, and do you know what, they're just absolutely, rather than, you'll find some organisations will try and screen out, and whereas they don't, they're screening, you know, and that's what I'm all for. I hate this screening thing, you know, and screening people out, you know.
Yeah, because in a previous role, I used to work in substance misuse, so we used to often get people that had come into an area or transferred out of an area for domestic violence. And one of the things that was kind of, like you said there about screening, it'd be sometimes we'd be trying to find a place for someone, but that certain area wouldn't take them because they were, you know, they were on a methadone prescription or whatever, for example. So it made it really hard. And then obviously the spaces then go from however many to get smaller and smaller, and actually try to find, oh, we can't take any more, we've already got two ladies that are on methadone or whatever, and it's just like, it's really difficult. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, well done.
As well, though, you know, we kind of push for disperse units, because I understand that if you've got a male victim that you need rehousing, you know, and if you've got a refuge with a lot of vulnerable women in, you know, you can understand that you wouldn't want to but then that's why it shows there's a need for disperse units, you know, that men can live independently but feel safe also.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any more questions? What I can do is, if anyone's got any more personal questions they want to ask, we can stop the recording, just so it's not obviously recorded. Or if anyone's got any more general or generic questions that they want to ask, please put your hand up or just shout out. No.
And also, sorry, James, if you want to kind of show our details again at the end, just I mean, because it might be that if anyone wants to contact us, if they'd rather not, you know, speak now, they want to contact us, if you can just kind of revisit that and show people how they can do that, obviously, you know, that'd be great. Yeah,
brilliant. That was going to be my next question, was just around how can we promote or support like you know, the service in terms of getting people, getting the word out there. Do you have any like if you've got like contact leaflets or anything like that, or anything that we can kind of share and talk, you know, we can obviously put in like resource packs and stuff on our website. That'd be really good. There might be some stuff on there already. It's always on the call.
Yeah.
I'll just go to Samantha's put hand up.
Hi everybody, I'm Samantha Hood, work in medical physics and engineering. Predominantly, I would say probably about 70 to 80% of our workforce of about 300 are men. So we're definitely trying to get more information out there into our teams. Just thought probably Alison's probably thinking the same sort of thing. This is what I would say is really important, crucial information for our mental health first aiders. Because this is the sort of thing that having the conversation, just listening to you both, Jackie and Joanne, just listening to some of the things, it's the kind of thing you're going to pick up when someone comes to see you straight away and there's something on their mind and they want to talk about things. And, you know, men might then start talking about their physical symptoms or stuff like that, you know, got stomachache or I have a headache or I'm feeling fatigued or something like that, when actually what you're talking about is, you know, there could be something with a little bit of assistance they might be able to open up about. So just would really encourage that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you, Samantha. Just go across to Alison again.
Hi, Samantha. It's really just going from what Samantha said. I think we're both thinking on the same lines there, Samantha. I've already just nipped through to somebody who's helping me arrange an event for the mental health first aiders. We've got over 400 of them now across our trust, and you'll be getting an email from them to see if you could come and talk to them as well the same way, because I think it's really important for them to have that understanding on the links with mental health and the signs and symptoms and where we can signpost. So definitely, Samantha, if you were thinking exactly the same way.
Thanks, Alison.
Two great minds.
Yeah.
Great minds think alike.
Alike, exactly.
Has anybody got anything else they want to ask? Any questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, anything else? If not, I'll end the recording. Yeah, I'll just end the recording and then we can say bye to everyone.